Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here today and taking your time to come to our PSTA board meeting, which is our public hearing on our millage rate and our budget. I'm going to start the meeting today with a call to order, and I see we do have a quorum. So without further ado, I would ask Commissioner Gerard to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, and now we will have our first public hearing to receive public input and allow the public to ask questions about our budget and concerning the authority's proposed final millage rate and proposed final operating and capital budget for fiscal year 2020. Tonight, we will vote on the final millage rate and final 2020 budget, which we have worked on all year long. Copies of our proposed final budget are available if you've not already obtained one. The proposed final fiscal year 2020 budget is included herewith, totaling $132,505,843. Our operating budget is $85,321,056, and our capital budget excuse me, is $47,184,787. The proposed final property tax rate is used to fund the fiscal year 2020 budget. Brad, would you please read the public statement for the record, please?
Good evening. This public hearing has been scheduled so that the general public may be given the opportunity to comment on the proposed final millage rate and budget for the fiscal year 2020. A paid advertisement concerning the public hearing appeared in the Tampa Bay Times on August 26th. Notices were posted at Park Street Terminal, Grand Central Station, Williams Park, Pinellas Park Transit Center, PSTA Administrative Headquarters, and on all PSTA buses, I saw it this morning, on PSA's website on August 26th. An announcement was posted on social media on August 27th. To date, staff has received no comments from the public concerning the issue.
Thank you, Brad. All right, Ms. Debbie Lales, our CFO for PSTA, would you please come forward and present our budget? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. This is the second of two required public hearings on the budget. 2 weeks ago, on September 11th, the board met and unanimously voted on a tentative millage rate as well as a tentative capital and operating budget. I do have a PowerPoint that I could show, but it is a repeat of essentially what I had 2 weeks ago, and I leave it to the discretion of the board what they would like.
Well, is it possible that you can just flip through it in a high level,
Sure.
Debbie, so that our public is able to see it?
Question.
Commissioner Eggers.
Since I was one of probably, I don't know how many others missed the meeting, I would just, don't go too high, just go through the presentation again. That would be helpful.
Thank you.
I'd be delighted to do so.
Proceed, please.
All right. A year ago, I stood before you and we talked about a budget that was 98% funded by a multitude of different revenue sources. But there was a small piece that we had to take from our reserves that we had planned in this year's budget. As I stand here tonight, I'm very proud to say I don't know that we are going to need actually any money from the budget. I just got the August numbers yesterday, and it looks like we are just about break even on the budget. And that is because all of us here within the authority have been doing a lot to save money and continue to do things differently. Our procurement team has done a fantastic job in saving money in a variety of different ways. We've locked in fuel prices last year as well as for next year. That has also helped us to save a considerable amount of money. Our maintenance team, which you'll be hearing a little bit more about later, has done a yeoman's job because they are now certified to do warranty work. They are incentivized to be able to improve their performance, and that really shows an increased amount of miles per gallon, as well as not having to outsource all of our things. So we continue to do things to save money. And not only are we proud of that, but we've done a lot during fiscal 19. There's been a lot of accomplishments. We have just recently received the APTA Sustainability Award, and we have put electric buses on the street, as well as ordered more electric buses. We have done things for our riders, such as mobility on demand, our Healthy Hop, our BRT, which you saw out at the front lobby, is progressing nicely through the design process. Recipients of many discretionary awards that not too many people in the country have received. And of course, this board has voted to maintain the service for next year to our public. So it has truly been a year of collaboration. Our operating budget next year of $85.3 million keeps the millage rate at the exact same amount. It is still focused on our community, on our customers, and our employees, as well as continuing to provide efficient public transportation service, while still maintaining a strategy of using a small amount of reserves. Excuse me. That $85 million bus or operations budget goes into operating a fleet of approximately 210 vehicles. Together with our partners, we provide over 40 routes on 13.6 revenue miles, as well as 892,000 hours of service. The budget includes expansion of our Direct Connect program, increased funding from our partners, as well as we know our DART ridership continues to increase here in Pinellas County. I have, over the summer, locked in our fuel rates at $1.88.5 per gallon, which helped to bring down the cost of the budget. We also have a significant number of robust state and federal legislative operating initiatives. In our capital program, we've had a lot of discussion. We have on the list our operators' safety shields. In the very near future, our first shield will be installed. We have in the budget the construction of our rapid transit service, as well as there'll be a vote tonight on our transit-oriented development. So those are very exciting things as we look forward to the future. So tonight, the action item, as Chair Long had mentioned, is to adopt a final millage rate at .7500 and to adopt and approve the 2020 operating and the 2020 capital budgets. With that, I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you so much for that nice overview of our position as it relates to our budget, Debbie. Any questions, members? Commissioner Eggers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Debbie. If just a couple questions. First of all, I'm glad you got the current year's deficit. I don't know how close to zero you got it, but it sounds like you got pretty close. And I know that took some work from where you started, so I really appreciate that effort. On the $85 million budget, operating budget that you have now, you said you were going to be planning to use some reserves. What is that
It's
estimated?
approximately another $1.7 million, similar to what we had this year. Of course, staff will continue to work to bring that number down as we move forward.
So that was what the initial deficit was forecast for 2019, which you tried to eliminate most of, and you're estimating that same.
Approximately the same for next year.
And where do you anticipate the starting reserve level being at the beginning of this year, which is approximately, I think, at least from the last estimate that I saw, 3 years from when we use up all of our reserves? What do you see it starting at?
I would be looking at about $24 million, which does not include our 2 months of operating reserves or our reserves for our claim settlements.
Plus,
about $24 million.
Okay. Plus 2 months of reserves for
Right, for operations.
And then how much for?
And then I think it's about $3.5 million, roughly, for our claims reserves.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that it, Commissioner Eggers?
It's for now, yes.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions on the budget? Anyone? All right. Thank you. Stay tuned. There's more to come. Okay. So on our agenda, we have board discussion. Is there any board discussion on what we've heard thus far? Anyone? Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah. Well, again, my comment about what you did this year, to try to minimize that forecasted deficit, I really appreciate. I think overall, when you look at where we are today, and at least in the next couple, 3 years of budget deficits, obviously we have no millage play at all, except reduction, and that's not gonna happen. So we're just looking at property values to bolster that increasing cost. And so, again, over the next 3 years, looking at those reserves that we have, I'm a little bit concerned about where we're heading. When you talked about the capital, I think you said, I don't know that you addressed the overall capital as far as purchases of buses and, I guess, trolleys. I mean, I know we're gonna have that discussion next month, but in this budget, how many buses do we have? How many trolleys do we have? And how many of those dollars are our reserve dollars?
We have in the budget for the next 2 fiscal years, 20 trolleys, and none of that is our money. It's all 100% FTA money.
Okay. And how about buses?
And then in the following fiscal year, we have, I believe, another 8 buses,
In 2021,
21,
so none in 20,
just the trolleys.
just the trolley, and then 21,
We
8.
would have, because with the trolleys will be spread over 2 fiscal years, just the way the manufacturing goes. So they'll be spread over 2 fiscal years, and then we also had anticipated additional 8 buses. We also will be receiving somewhere in the next year 4 additional electric buses.
And of that $47 million capital that you're talking about, then 5.8 is from our reserves. At least that's what
For
it
next
showed.
year.
Yeah, for next year. And that primarily is for what?
That is primarily for the BRT, or the RTS, Rapid Transit Service.
And at this rate, you're still planning on a 3 years' worth of reserves, correct?
Yes, it'll be in 2022.
Okay, well, I think that's my biggest concern is where we're heading with, and again, I mentioned one time before about a Plan B. I know Plan B is, well, I know what Plan A is. It's some kind of cooperative effort with the county and a referendum for some additional funding for the program. A Plan B, if that doesn't happen, I'd like to hear more about that conversation, since we won't find that out. The first answer to the question about whether we get the referendum until November of next year, that will be halfway almost until we're halfway through our 3-year period. So I'm not quite halfway, but a little concerned about where we're going to be at that point without a Plan B discussed. So anyway, I really wanted to say thank you for the effort you made, but for me it's difficult to approve a budget that has this kind of deficit as we're heading towards that 3-year deficit, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner Eggers. Debbie, could you please, for the benefit of the board as we move forward to have a deeper dive discussion on the trolley issue, could you share with us the dollars being spent for those trolleys, where those dollars will come from?
Those dollars will be 100% Federal Transit Administration dollars for that.
Okay, and can we use those dollars for operations?
For our operations?
Yeah.
No, not for operating the service, no.
Okay, I think that's important, and I would ask that you all keep that in the front of your mind as we move forward to have a deeper dive on that discussion. Okay, so with that said, is there any other information that the rest of the board needs or would like to ask about before we move to public comment? Anyone? I don't see anyone. No red lights. Okay, then we will start the public comment discussion on the millage rate. Mr. Rask, good evening. Welcome. Please step forward.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Tom
Good
Rask, unincorporated Pinellas County. As Mr. Miller stated, you've had 0 comments come in to date. about this millage. That should concern you. Tells you that this, people view this as a perfunctory hearing, a kangaroo hearing. And millage means taxation. It's a taking. And taking requires due process, and this is part of the due process. And any taking of the citizens' resources requires trust. You don't have that trust. You don't have that trust with me. You don't have that trust with anybody who's dug into the finances and the operations of PSTA. And I'll give just 2 examples. The chair, as late as June, the last meeting I was at, was suggesting and has suggested to a number of people, as far as I know, that the BRT project would get funded in the fiscal year that starts Tuesday. It will not. And this agency knew this in March. And yet, whether it's Mr. Miller, who continued to suggest that to Ms. Long, or however it happened, the message to the public was, it's going to get funded. And it's reflected in the fact that PSTA's website, as late as May, said that construction would start in 2019, calendar year 2019. Well, that obviously couldn't happen if you're not going to get funded in the fiscal year that starts on Tuesday. So that doesn't inspire trust when the messaging is that you're getting funded when in March you knew you weren't getting funded because you weren't getting a construction agreement. That was decided in March. That came out in an FTA document in March. And Mr. Miller, when I was here 3 months ago, suggested that the 3-year requirement that certain proportion of the non-CIG funds for that project be raised within 3 years, that I was wrong, that his, quote, consultants have told him that it only applies to new starts projects, not small starts projects. So I requested some public documents around that, public records, and one of the documents I got was an email that he sent to this board in late June or early July, I don't have the exact date, where he said, I'm anticipating an email from FTA on this item, which I will forward to you once I receive it. In other words, an email from the FTA saying I was wrong about this. I have made 3 public records requests for that email or any record of such communication from the FTA to Mr. Miller since that time, including this week. There is no such email. So Mr. Miller tells you things, doesn't update you and say, hey, I never got that email. The FTA never told me that. It raises the question, I discussed this with Ms. Borchers before the meeting. The question is this project even alive? Are you sure this project is even alive with FTA? You know, they have a habit of just not telling you. They just let you figure out yourself the project is dead. Again, I need to finish up. You don't have the trust of the public. It should concern you. $132,505,843. That's over $100 when you subtract out what the FTA, I know, Mr. Zimmett, I know I'm over the
Yes, you
limit.
are out of time.
When you subtract out the money that PSTA brings in revenues, that's over $100 per person for every man, woman, and child, young and old in this county. You waste it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Rass. They are duly noted. And would you like to also speak to us? No? Okay, sorry. All right. Thank you for correcting me. All right, now I must read the following information to include in the record. For the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority, the fiscal year 2020 rollback rate is 0.7026. The fiscal year 2020 final proposed rate of 0.7500 is 6.75% greater than the rolled back rate. Thank you so much. The fiscal year 2020 millage rate is to be levied is 0.7500. Okay?
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can read. How about that?
I just want to touch all the bases.
And I appreciate it very much. So if there are no further questions, I would ask for a motion to adopt the resolution 1906, which is included in your packet.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Gerard and seconded by Councilor Albritton. Would you please open the board?
Let me read the title first.
Oh, Alan, please, thank you, read the title.
Resolution 1906, a resolution of the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority fixing the final millage rate to be levied for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2019, and ending September 30, 2020, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you very much. And your voting card should be on your machines. If it is, please cast your vote. All right. We have 9, I'm sorry?
Mine's not showing up, but
Thank you so much. Commissioner Albritton, do you want to cast your vote manually, by verbally?
Yes.
Everybody good? All the votes cast? We have 11 yes and 1 abstain. Oh, no, 1 no by Commissioner David Eggers. So thank you all for that vote, and the motion passes. Thank you very much. Commissioner Albritton, did you have another point you wanted to make? Your light is blinking.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was trying to just want to tell you it wasn't working here.
Okay, all right. All right, and now we are going to have our public comments on our fiscal year 2020 budget. But before we do, I would like to introduce our very prestigious school board member, Joanne Lentino. Would you stand up and just turn around and say hello to everyone? Thank you very much, and thank you for being here this evening. You're welcome. Without further ado, then, may I ask Mr. Rask, please come to the podium again.
Once again, Tom Rask, unincorporated Pinellas County. Repeat that number, $132,505,843. That's a lot of money. And what has PSTA been doing with that money in the last year? Look at your operating statistics in this month's board packet, and you'll see that bus traffic, or the revenue passenger trips, total bus revenue passenger trips, were down 6.7% for August. They're down for the year. They're likely to continue down. This while driving more revenue hours and more revenue miles and increasing staff to, I can see, looks like 619 from 605, maybe next year. Expenditures, staff keep going up, more miles, more hours, fewer riders. Any responsible organization would look at that and say we need to do things a little bit differently. Mr. Eggers acknowledged the political reality that a millage rate lower than 0.75 is not going to happen, and that's what we got. We got 0.75. We have a budget that is taking PSTA slowly but surely towards insolvency. Ms. Leos told me that if you go ahead with the BRT, absent any new funding, you got a little over 2 years left. Then you're insolvent. If you don't go ahead with the BRT, you're still going to go insolvent. Just it's going to take a little longer. And what's being done about that? Well, I don't see anything being done. Mr. Eggers is raising some questions, but no one seems to see there's a problem here or think there's a problem here. And those who don't think there's a problem maybe should look at what happened to those board members who served on the board of the Transit Authority out in Utah that was embroiled in a scandal a few years ago. It blows up sooner or later, and the stink is going to stick to you. So I ask you to please look at where PSTA is headed. This is not a good budget. This budget should cut. You already voted for a millage, then okay, at least look at cutting routes. That is what was promised in 2014 by PSTA, that if Greenlight Pinellas failed, they would implement no new revenue scenario in the bus study. That hasn't happened. Still running more hours, more miles, fewer passengers. I think at this point the ridership, the paid ridership, is down maybe 25% from the peak. So please don't approve this budget. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so now we are in our 2.1 to adopt our final fiscal year 2020 budget resolution. So I would like to ask for a motion to adopt the resolution 1907. Alan, would you please read the resolution?
Resolution 1907, a resolution of the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority adopting the final budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2019, and ending September 30, 2020, for carrying on the duties and obligations of the authority and providing for an effective date.
Thank you very much. Rachel, would you, well,
So
first,
moved.
thank you, Commissioner Rice. May I have a
Second.
second? Who did the second?
I did, second.
Thank you very, very much. Rachel, you have that recorded, thank you. Could you please open the voting system? All right, and that motion passes with 11 yeses and 1 no from Commissioner Dave Eggers. So this concludes the public hearing portion of the meeting, and now we'll move into our regular board meeting agenda. Do we have any public comment for the regular board meeting?
Yes, these three.
Okay. The first person is Elizabeth Olden. Please come forward. State your name and good evening. Hello. You'll have, state your name, please, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board and your address for the record.
Elizabeth Olden, 6466 81st Avenue, Pinellas Park, 33781.
Welcome.
Thank you. I attended the BRT open house on September 11th and tonight. I am very impressed with all the work that's gone into this. There's a team of people making sure traffic will run smoothly, buses will run on time, businesses will benefit, and even PSTA and the traffic lights will cooperate. I got to talk to an engineer who explained to me about features that can be added as needed to make BRT even better as time goes on. I am excited about the difference this will make to the locals as well as tourists in downtown St. Pete. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olden, very much for being here this evening, taking your valuable time to attend our meeting. We appreciate it very much. All right, and now may I ask Lee Johnson, Mr. Lee Johnson, to please come forward, who wants to address us about bus number 4. Please state your name and your address for the record,
Hi.
and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
My name is Lee Johnson. My address is 380 Colony Point Road South, St. Petersburg, 33705.
Welcome.
Thank you. My comment about the bus 4 is that it loops around to Roy Hanna Drive, comes back down 62nd Avenue South to 4th Street, and then goes downtown. Now, coming all the way around that way, it's fine. However, there's 4 of those buses per hour, pretty much. And I would like to say that 2 of those should turn right on 62nd Avenue and go up and loop around the other direction. So, because the schools and everything is there, there's no bus in between 4th Street and going to 9th Street, and no bus from 9th Street all the way around to 62nd Avenue South. So that's leaving out a lot of people who would, be using the bus, including myself. And it would just make it a lot more efficient if the bus went both directions instead of just one on Pinellas Point Drive and 62nd Avenue. So,
Well, thank you so much for that suggestion, and I noted that our CEO, Brad Miller, wrote that down, and I see
Yeah.
Cassandra Borges coming forward. Maybe she'll talk to you about the possibility.
oh, I hope so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have a good evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, and now we have, I see, Tom Rask, did you have another comment that you would like to make? Please come forward.
Yes. Once again, Tom Rask, unincorporated Pinellas County. Just wanted to comment briefly. I'm wearing this shirt today because it's the Rays color. Also, it's a shirt from the 2015 Rugby World Cup. The 2019 Rugby World Cup is going on right now. It's Scotland here because that's where my wife is from. So, and it also fits in with the tackling that I think PSTA needs. Because PSTA just can't get it right on a number of things, a number of areas, as I've alluded to before. And 2 days ago, there was an event here at the mall in Pinellas Park, where a PSTA bus and a Greyhound bus were taken out of revenue service and used as backdrops so that some politicians, including the chair and some other people here, could speak. And the video was posted on PSTA's Facebook page. And I couldn't help but comment. So I wrote 2 buses sitting idle and out of revenue service just so that politicians can pass gas. And don't you know, PSTA responded. Whoever the PSTA's Facebook person is responded. Good thing there was a strong breeze today. Now that's a humorous response, an unnecessary response, but I couldn't help but notice that there were some complaints a couple of days earlier, and that's what I'm looking for. And I wonder whether these complaints are even included in your stats that are on the operating stats of complaints. Because on September 11th, people were invited to join the Transit Rider Advisory Committee, and they said, be a voice for the riders of PSTA. One lady named Michelle Carter said to PSTA, just want to let you know I'm a person, and if your driver has an issue with me paying in quarters and orders me to, in all caps, just sit down, how would that make you feel? My wallet was out. By the way, I felt belittled and embarrassed. Thanks, driver, sarcastically. A lady named Lori Mallory said, just want to let you know that the new management for Care Ride is ruining it. It was perfect, but since the new management, it's back to long waits and unhappy people. Thanks for taking away the only form of transportation for the disabled. Again, some sarcasm. So I would much prefer, rather than responding and making me laugh about my comments, responding to my comments, I wish the PSTA would respond to these comments. So I'll leave these with Ms. Capola, so you have a copy of it. And I wonder whether these kinds of comments are included as complaints in your operating stats. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rask. All right, is that the end of our public comment?
Yes.
Okay. So now we are on our presentation section of the budget, members of the board, and I would pleasantly like to introduce our Director of Maintenance, Henry Lukasik, to make a very special presentation to us. Henry.
Well, good evening. So this past Monday at the annual Florida Public Transit Association conference, PSTA's Fleet Maintenance's very own Mr. Jeffrey Underhill was honored by receiving the prestigious State of Florida Bus Technician of the Year. Mr. Underhill earned PSTA's nomination for Bus Tech of the Year through his daily commitment to excellence, his positive attitude, his leadership qualities, and of course, his dedication to our core mission at PSTA, which is to provide the highest level of properly maintained buses to the passengers of Pinellas County. 4 years ago, Mr. Underhill joined PSTA's Fleet Maintenance Division as an entry-level Tech 1. Back at that time, we referred to them as mechanics. We certainly do not do that anymore. Flash forward today, and in 4 years, Mr. Underhill has now elevated himself to Technician 3, and he did so by accomplishing these very outstanding accomplishments. Number one, he successfully completed all very challenging 8 transit bus certification tests to become an ASE certified master transit bus technician. These tests are so challenging that only 2 out of every 3 test takers actually pass them. ASE is short for the National Institute of Automotive Service Excellence and has been in existence since 1972. Knowing that transit bus technicians were prominent as part of the automotive industry, they teamed with the United States Department of Transportation and the American Public Transit Association to create these specific transit bus technician level tests. Believe it or not, there are only 955 master transit bus technicians in this country. 3 of them, one of which is Mr. Underhill, work at PSTA. And there's several other technicians right now that are on their way to achieving this status.
That's pretty impressive.
The other accomplishment that Mr. Underhill completed is that he is a recent graduate of the Certified Transit Technician Program, which is sponsored by the Florida Department of Transportation and for the Center of Transportation Research, also known as Cutter, which is based out of USF. This is an exceptional achievement because only a select few are chosen, and even fewer actually graduate from the program. It is highly selective from all of the technicians here in the state of Florida. And that is due to the intensive instructional course requirements. But I should also mention that he graduated with the highest grade point average of his class this year. I want to take a moment to quote from this past conference's awards ceremony. It's a quote by FDOT's Public Transit Administration's Public Operations Administrator, Robert Westbrook, to which he said, and I quote, "In all the years of doing this, I want to take a moment to tell everyone how much this gentleman impressed not only me, but the entire committee. After we presented the award and Jeffrey left, I was humbled, and I didn't know what to say. This is somebody we all can learn from." And I second that comment. This marks the second State of Florida Technician of the Year award for PSTA's Maintenance Department. The first was being Mr. Robert Ferris back in 2016. I want to take the opportunity at this time to also recognize 2 people of my staff that you don't get to see, but I have the privilege of working with every day. And that is Deputy Director of Maintenance Joe Cheney and Superintendent of Training Rocky Macaluso. They couldn't be here tonight, but it's their leadership and their guidance that paved the way for every PSTA fleet technician to realize their full potential and strive for nothing but excellence. So, without further delay, please join me in congratulating PSTA Tech 3, Jeffrey Underhill, as the 2019 State of Florida Bus Technician of the Year.
Thank you all, I appreciate it.
Well, that was really impressive, Mr. Underhill. Thank you so much for all your dedication and very hard work. Very, very impressive. And now we are at the point in our agenda where we are going to receive another presentation on the surveys that PSTA completes as part of its organizational scorecard system. We do pride ourselves on being a data-driven organization, and these surveys are a demonstration of that philosophy. Human Resources Director Trish Collins is our guest this evening and will lead us in this presentation. Trish.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
As you all know, we measure our performance here at PSTA with a balanced scorecard performance counts system in which we focus on 5 key strategic areas: community support, financial stability, customer satisfaction, employee engagement, and commitment to performance. 3 of those areas are measured in part by surveys that we conduct. Our community support survey is conducted by phone with non-riders, people who do not typically ride PSTA service in the county. Our customer satisfaction survey is conducted on the bus with folks who do ride the bus. And our employee engagement survey is conducted online with our current employees here in-house every year. These three important stakeholder groups, our customers, our community, and our employees, are absolutely critical to our success. And in fact, the surveys that they respond to make up a full third of our total overall score on the scorecard. So we're sharing the results of all three surveys with you today. And I'll welcome up first Whitney Fox, our Director of Marketing and Communications, to talk about our community survey.
Welcome, Whitney.
Thank you very much. You got it? You guys are on top of it. Great, thank you. Good evening, board members. As Trish said, my name is Whitney Fox, the Director of Communications and Marketing here at PSTA, and I'm here to tell you about our community sentiment survey results. This is a statistically valid survey conducted with 1,000 non-rider residents by telephone throughout the entire county. Our overall goal of the survey was to have at least 90% of our non-rider community believe PSTA delivers a valuable service to residents of Pinellas County. It was focused on high-level questions regarding county residents' awareness of the PSTA brand itself and reactions to a few key questions. So we are proud to report that 73.1% of non-riders can call Pinellas County's transit by name. I'm sure you can agree with me that this is a very high recognition for a public service. And that is improved from the 67% score we received just last year. Also, when prompted, Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority, or PSTA, sounded familiar to 85% of our non-riders in the community, another improvement from the 80.1% recorded from last year. Now remember, as I mentioned before, as we go into the next slide, our top goal of the survey was to have at least 90% of our non-rider community to believe that PSTA delivers a valuable service to residents of Pinellas County. But you'll be proud to know that 95% of non-riders believe PSTA delivers a valuable service, and that is an improvement from last year's 90.4%. We are all pleased to report that the overall awareness of PSTA and the value we bring to the community has increased compared to the previous year. Now, although this is exciting news, we will never stop working hard to improve our marketing and communications efforts to better educate Pinellas County residents and the value that PSTA brings to our community. I'd like to thank you and introduce the next survey results will be from Christopher Browning from TransPro on customer satisfaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Whitney. Very good presentation. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair and Board. Happy to be here tonight to present the results of the fixed route and paratransit customer satisfaction from the latest wave. The way we like to think about measuring customer satisfaction or measuring the customer experience is through customer satisfaction. And we've done this now for several waves with both fixed route and paratransit. And as you can see for the fixed route, the NPS score, which is how many industries measure customer satisfaction, it's the Net Promoter Score. So how many promoters do you have compared to how many detractors do you have? And for fixed route, it's at 47%, which is also 47% above a sample industry average. On the DART side, that NPS, that Net Promoter Score, is at 73%. That is very high. That is a great number and is right alongside of some of your peers as well. Thinking about what the most...
What is the wave?
It's just the number of surveys that we've completed with PSTA. Yes, ma'am. Looking at what the most important factors are for your fixed route customers, buses arriving on time, so that on-time performance is far and away the most important factor, followed by the hours that you provide operation, as well, followed third as fare price. Just some interesting numbers here. The purpose of why your customers are using your service. 63% in this wave say that they are using the service to get to and from work, and 73% are using the service at least 5 days a week. Thinking about community value, going back to the comment Whitney provided, 90% of your customers on board believe that PSTA provides value to the community. And 83% believe that the community should consider increasing funding to support transit initiatives. Looking at the DART side, the most important factors for customers are vehicles arriving on time performance, and followed by safety on the vehicle. And those are the highlight results for your customer satisfaction. Overall, very well done.
Question?
Commissioner Justice.
Thank you, Manager. Unless I'm missing, when was the survey done? What time frame?
April of 2019.
Okay. Yes, sir. All right. I was just wondering about the factors on, we had some high-profile situations with Hart and Tampa, and wondering how that factored into people's response, and so, just curious.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else for the good of the, no one? All right, thank you very much. Trish?
Yeah, thanks, Christopher. Finally, I'd like to introduce Tamika White. She's our Senior Organizational Development Manager, and she's going to talk about our Employee Engagement Survey.
Thank you. Trish?
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members.
Good evening.
As Trish said, I'm Tamika White. I'm the Senior Organizational Development Manager in our HR department, and I'm here to share with you the results from our 2019 online employee engagement survey. When we think about employee engagement, in a nutshell, we're talking about how our employees think, feel, and act. It's the level of their emotional connection to the organization. And employee engagement is important to us here at PSTA because we want our employees to feel valued so that they have a strong sense of commitment and enthusiasm towards their jobs. From an organizational perspective, this positively affects safety, our number one priority, customer service, as well as our rates of employee retention, productivity, and overall performance. With the implementation of the performance scorecard, we decided to use our 2018 engagement scores as our benchmark to measure success in this area moving forward. We followed the 2018 survey last year with employee focus groups so that we could dive deeper into the results and truly understand the needs and the desires of our employees. We used the data we received to not only inform us, but to really govern our focus and prioritization of the many initiatives that we implemented this past year. For example, one of the areas that we needed to strengthen was leadership and managing change. So we implemented 3 new initiatives this year. We now offer leadership training for our transportation supervisors. We have a 3-day Awesome Boss Boot Camp to further the development of our managers. And we also have performance innovation teams, which are led by employees at all levels across the organization to come up with ideas and plans to improve the agency. Our efforts were not in vain. In 2018, the total percentage of employees who were deemed somewhat or fully engaged was 73%. And I'm very pleased to announce that in 2019, our engagement scores went up to 81%. Our employees are the heart and soul of this organization, so PSTA will continue to work hard to improve the employee experience and ensure PSTA is a top workplace of choice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tamika. So these important surveys are directly represented on the performance scorecard, and you'll see them on the 4th quarter results that you receive. The insight that we gain from them, as I think each presenter has said, continue to help us drive the right strategy to improve the experience for our community, our customers, and our employees. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions for either myself or the other 2 presenters.
Any questions, members? Commissioner Schulman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question about the community sentiment survey. Were there any specific questions as it relates to the DART or our other services and the familiarity in the community about those programs?
Absolutely. We actually went through all of the services that we provide in detail, so there's quite a long list, and we have statistics and numbers for every single service and how familiar each person was with each service.
Is it possible to get those numbers?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Thank you so much, Trish. All right. So the local coordinating board, Brad? Or the Transit Advisory Committee, I'm sorry, Ms. Olden, please come forward with that report.
Hello again. Good evening, Chairman Long, Mr. Miller, and esteemed board members. The track met on September 17th, 2019. We heard a presentation by Nicole Roberts of the St. Petersburg Downtown Partnership about their Car-Free St. Pete initiative. She explained the effort is a collaboration with PSTA, the Cross Bay Ferry, Coast Bike Share, and the Downtown Looper to encourage residents and visitors to use alternative forms of transportation to get around St. Pete and to the beaches. Ms. Roberts detailed the advantage of going car-free, which included energy saving, sustainability benefits, better individual health and wellness, boosting the local economy, and a more mobile, accessible workforce. Track members were invited to attend or volunteer at the World Car Free Day event held at Green Bench Brewing on September 22nd. Juan Luvian, PSTA's public engagement planner, presented the October service changes which will take effect October 20th, 2019. Track members were asked to assist the public engagement team with the public outreach on the Central Ave trolley and at the transfer centers. The next meeting is October 15th at 4 p.m. And as always, all the board members are welcome to attend.
Thank you so much, Ms. Olden, for being here and for giving that report.
Thank you.
Any questions, members? No? All right, Brad, would you like to speak to the local coordinating board, please?
I would. Good evening. The local coordinating board is the state designated board that oversees transportation disadvantage funds for Pinellas County. Every county in Florida has a local coordinating board. It has a transit representative, although right now it does not from this board because Patty Johnson, who is no longer on the board, I think is still the chair. And I see on here that former board member Brian Scott was reelected as vice chair. So we'll have to just check with the MPO to see about finding a new board member that might want to serve on the local coordinating board. But in the meantime, I'll give the update of what they had at their September 17th meeting. A remote presentation was given by staff from Safe Mobility for Life, which operates a statewide transportation information and referral service for senior citizens to improve upon the statistic that 1 in 3 fatal accidents in Florida includes a driver over age 65. The LCB then discussed and approved changes to the Transportation Disadvantage Service Plan so that operating agencies like the Neighborly Care Network can get better reimbursed for many of the vital trips that they provide. Next, the LCB received an updated trip data on both Advantage Ride programs and the Transportation Disadvantage trips. Advantage Ride is an interesting program that the state legislature has funded in Pinellas, Manatee, and Hillsborough as a pilot survey, providing TNC rides to significantly developmentally disabled individuals. And that program is up and running now. The meeting ended with good news that both of PSTA's Innovative and Service Development Grant applications to the state will be funded by the TD Commission in the current year to continue the successful TD late shift program that PSTA has, and to create a new program, a transportation disadvantaged version of the Innovative Direct Connect program. The next LCD meeting will take place on November 19th at 9:15.
Thank you, Brad, very much. Commissioner Eggers, are you ready to deliver the Forward Pinellas report? Thank you very much.
I'm happy to report that the meeting that I had chaired for a few months, it was going 3.5 hours, ended after 2 hours this time.
Excellent.
Thanks to the leadership of Councilwoman Rice, who got us down to about 2.5 hours. So we're heading in the right direction, and former Commissioner Maroney would be happier.
He would be very pleased.
That we're getting it a little shorter. Having said that, we did meet on September 11th. And the board heard a presentation on Advantage Pinellas. This included the results of a MetroQuest survey conducted in July, which informed the development of the long-range transportation cost feasible plan. As development of the Advantage Pinellas plan draws to a close, the focus is on aligning revenues with projects and how to fund specific priorities. Executive Director Whit Blanton gave a presentation on transportation funding that he and County Administrator Barry Burton have been presenting around the county and developing in partnership with PSTA. The plan focuses on countywide transportation needs, investment corridors, and how these needs could be funded, with 3 major intended outcomes: reduced road congestion, safer transportation corridors, and enhanced transit service. The plan looks at how to connect people, jobs and training, housing that is affordable, and future development. Whit Blanton and Barry Burton are continuing to make these presentations throughout the county. And if you're lucky enough, you'll get to hear it a third and a fourth and a fifth time. And they keep tweaking it just a little bit each time, so it's getting better and better. FDOT staff presented an update on the design process for the planned Palm Harbor roundabouts on alternate US 19 at Florida Avenue. FDOT is holding a public workshop in partnership with Pinellas County on November 4th at Palm Harbor University, as well as a virtual public hearing on January 9th. The project is not funded for construction, and everybody is all nervous about a roundabout, so we'll see how that public event goes. The board also discussed Vision Zero Award and the importance of Forward Pinellas' upcoming effort for improving safety in Pinellas County and for all users. Forward Pinellas staff announced the annual call for projects for the Complete Streets Grant Funding, Planning, and Placemaking Grant Funding and Transportation Alternatives Grant Funding. These grant funding opportunities will be released this month, and that concludes my report.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that very comprehensive report. Very good. All right. Now we are on the consent portion of our agenda, and I would like to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda unless one of you has an issue that you want to pull.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Justice. Thank you, Commissioner Gerard. Please open the voting card. Excellent. Oh, are we missing somebody? Who left? Oh, Commissioner Saraki. You got it? All right, that is 10 affirmatives. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very, very much. And now for our action item, transport. I'm sorry? Okay. Brad, would you like to introduce our action item, please?
Yes, this is an, there. I'm very excited to introduce Cassandra to tell you about this great grant award we got and contract.
So the action item before you today is to award a $3 million contract to Kimley Horn with a first task work order of $1.2 million that is entirely grant funded. In 2018, PSTA applied for a TOD pilot program grant through the Federal Transit Administration, and we were awarded our full ask for that grant because of the comments that FTA had made on our land use application as part of our Small Starts submittal for the Central Avenue BRT. And so the work that will happen under this task work order will advance what the city of St. Petersburg has been doing along the Central Avenue corridor, as well as work with the cities of St. Pete Beach and South Pasadena to enhance their land use along this major transit corridor. The core areas of focus, in addition to land use and zoning, will be to look at and study, provide guiding documents for economic development, business assistance, and outreach, as well as look at multimodal connectivity and things that generally the cities along transit corridors do. So we are very grateful to have the partnership between Forward Pinellas and the city of St. Petersburg. They have both committed to track staff hours, which will be the match for this grant. So there is no PSTA cash involved in matching this grant, and that was approved by the Federal Transit Administration as well. So we are very excited to move forward with this contract and with the work under this scope. I will also let you know that during our procurement process, we did advertise this project on our PSTA website as well as DemandStar. We also did a little bit of churning up the selection committee, and we invited both the city of St. Petersburg to be a major partner in the selection, as well as Forward Pinellas staff, in addition to the city of South Pasadena and St. Pete Beach. The city of St. Pete Beach was not unable to participate because of when things were scheduled, but I do want to let you know that everyone was invited and participated as much as they could. So the evaluation committee selected Kimley Horn for this award, and we have Clarence Eng from Kimley Horn here today. He is the project manager and also the transit practice leader for Kimley Horn. So we are excited to put together this contract. It is a 5-year contract to Kimley Horn. I will also let you know that the $3 million upset limit is done specifically so that both our partners and we can continue to use this contract to use the initial task work order as an example for the rest of the county, and that was expressly asked for by Forward Pinellas and all of the work that they're doing across the county. And so that upset limit difference between the 1.2 and the 3 million is to allow us to also to apply for future grants with the FTA through PSTA, or allow our partners to also use this contract for this corridor or other corridors. If we go above the $1.2 million that you will hopefully approve tonight, we will bring those task work orders back to the board.
Okay.
So with that,
And any questions, thoughts, concerns?
I would just say that the Finance Committee 2 weeks ago did unanimously recommend this approval.
All right. And I would just like to bring to your attention that this is one of many grants that we have received from the Federal Transit Authority, and that the good work that we have been doing for now the last 7 years that I have been on PSTA is really beginning to show fruitfulness for our agency. Everywhere we go when we are in DC, PSTA is highly respected and has built enormous awareness within the halls of the Capitol as well as in the Federal Transit Authority. And our relationships that we've made with the folks there have been very, very rewarding. So I hope you can just get a little bit of a taste of how positive things are with regard to where we sit today. And even though, yes, we do have a few challenges that we are working very, very hard to address, I think our citizens can be very comforted that we are working incredibly hard to find solutions for moving forward. So I just felt like I needed to really share that with you because it's been a lot of hard work and taken a long, long time. So with that said, Commissioner Eggers.
Just one quick question on the scope of the work that the bidders addressed.
Yes.
It was obviously, was it the exact work or the exact scope that we asked for in the grant? I mean.
Yes.
So the likelihood of coming back here for additional money is
For this initial
for this
scope?
project,
No.
Okay, that's, just want to make sure I understood that. I thought you said something about bringing it back, and
I'll clarify that. If there is an additional task work order that is above the $1.2 million, then we would bring that back to the board. It would not be for this scope, it would be for additional scope
Okay.
under a new grant or from one of our partners.
you probably said that, and I wasn't listening.
No, that's okay.
So thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Cassandra. Very well done. Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, Commissioner Rice.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out at the bottom of the first page of the summary, there's a reference to the contractor working with the city of St. Petersburg, our planning efforts, and referred to the Central Avenue revitalization plan. And I'm sure this is in everyone's mind, but since it wasn't mentioned explicitly here, the Vision 2050 process is going to kick off in November. That's going to be a very intensive year in which we are going to be addressing the same issues of higher densities, mixed-use development, and transit-oriented development. So I just wanted to kind of be sure to mention that. And then our plan is, after that first year of pretty intense public outreach and engagement, that then we would go into an implementation period.
Our discussions with the City of St. Petersburg staff have been exactly about dovetailing with the 2050 vision plan, and that is a citywide plan. We're hoping that some of the products out of this corridor will help that citywide plan explain what you'd like to do for the rest of the city. So we hope we'll have benefit to both projects.
Yeah, lots of planning. So, thank you.
Very well done. Thank you, Commissioner Rice. Anyone else? Anyone? No? All right. Then I would like a motion to approve the transit-oriented development plan. Cassandra? Thank you.
Did you just call him and ask him?
Oh, I apologize. I got ahead of myself here. I don't see Mr. Rask in the front row here. Has he already left? Are we sure? James, he left? Yes, he said goodbye. Well, okay. Let the record reflect that we did acknowledge that he did want to speak on this item. All right, thank you very much, and now I do believe we have a motion and a second. Would you please open the voting board? Thank you. And that is approved unanimously. Thank you, everyone, very much. And now, Brad, we have an information item that you would like to bring to our attention.
Okay, I will keep this as brief, but we certainly can have any discussion. Hope we have some good discussion about this. I know I'm the last one, I'm the last thing we have to do tonight. So, all the time, as we discussed when Debbie was up here presenting our budget, our capital budget, PSTA buys buses. That's what we kind of do here, that's what we're known for. Is buses, and we buy replacement buses almost each and every year to replace the oldest buses in our fleet. The oldest buses get replaced with the new buses, and we keep refreshing our fleet to provide the best service we can to our community. Well, it just happens to be that right now, our oldest buses in the PSTA fleet of 210 buses are our trolley buses. PSTA has 16 trolley buses, and they are from 2007, so they are our oldest in our fleet. So when we took the item that is budgeted, as Debbie noted, to the Finance Committee back in August, There were a number of good questions by a couple of the Finance Committee members, and we held off on making a recommendation to the PSTA board on buying the replacement trolley buses for our fleet, until we could have some discussion about that at the board, and then at the Finance Committee, and then at the board again in October. So just tonight is the sort of round one opening discussion. It's an informational item only. That's tonight. At the Finance Committee meeting in a couple weeks on October 18th, we're going to take a deeper dive into the financial implications of the trolley operations in Pinellas County and how they're operated. And then finally, at the October 25th board meeting, again, we'll be back and have an action item before you. We'll have some discussion and then an action item to purchase, again, the replacement of the existing trolleys. So specifically at the Finance Committee back in August, when we deferred action on this, we had some really good discussions and questions by Commissioner Schulman and Commissioner Eggers. Commissioner Schulman's question was a good question. Well, how many trolleys are we going to really need to replace in the future? Because we are going to be implementing a bus rapid transit system down in St. Petersburg that parallels some of our trolleys. So that was question number one. And Commissioner Eggers asked a broader question of, would it be better to have the Jolly Trolley, PSTA's contractor up in the Clearwater area, operate trolley services instead? Have all the trolleys be operated by a contractor, Jolly Trolley. And again, we're going to have some discussions and take a deeper dive at the Finance Committee in a couple of weeks on this. So, question number one, Commissioner Schulman's question, how we came up with the number of 20 is shown on this slide. For PSTA's operations, we have 8 trolleys that we use each and every day on one route. We have 5 on the Central Avenue trolley. Actually, we have 7 today, but once the BRT is up and running, we're going to cut that back down to 5. And so there's 5 trolleys there. That gets 13. This is like my practice for Dunkin' Donuts. You know how many you have left for your dozen. 4 spares. And then you can see that last line item called plugs. So as we all know, Pinellas County lives and breathes by our tourist economy. So does PSTA. Our highest ridership each and every year is in the springtime. And because we have so much service, and especially with trolleys, which are very, very popular with tourists, we have to have extra trolleys that we provide. We run extra trolleys during the spring break period of March through about the 1st of May on many of our routes. Now, we actually use approximately, it kind of varies from year to year, but we use about 6 typically during the spring break period of a couple of months. But we believe that we could kind of get away with only ordering 3 trolleys for that period because it's only 3 months of the year. And sometimes maybe we'll have some of the extra spares available, and we can always use a regular bus. Not that tourists love those, just a little bit less, but we can supplement it with regular buses if need be. So that's how we got to the 20 replacement vehicles. Right now, when we only have 16, we're often and they're our oldest and least reliable buses in the fleet, we often have to use regular buses instead of trolleys on the different routes. So this is my favorite slide. Pinellas County has an awesome buffet of trolley services all over the county. And I think it's often not known by residents who maybe live up in, say, Dunedin, about all the different trolleys. And I don't think folks who live down in St. Petersburg necessarily know about all the trolleys that operate in other parts of the county. I know that the tourists who ride the trolleys, they have no idea what they're riding. They all say, "Oh, I love the trolley." And then they say that to me in downtown St. Petersburg. They say that to me up in Tarpon Springs, and they say that to me in Clearwater. I love the trolley. there's a long history of trolleys in Pinellas County. This is probably one of our most successful, I know it's our most successful or most popular services we operate. The Central Avenue Trolley in St. Petersburg has operated, it started out as a real trolley with tracks back in 1916, and it operates basically the same route today that it operated back then. The Suncoast Beach Trolley, which is the trolley that runs along Gulf Boulevard along the beaches, all the way, it started in 1969 as actually, and I just loved looking up all this history, but it started as multiple different routes, and in 2001, PSTA knitted that together, so now there's one trolley that runs all the way from St. Pete Beach to Clearwater, all the way up and down Gulf Boulevard. On Clearwater, there's two different routes. There's a South Beach and a North Beach route. Those were started in the early 1980s. PSTA currently has a contract with a nonprofit organization that you know and love called the Jolly Trolley to operate those two routes. In 2010, our baby of the trolleys, basically spearheaded by a former PSTA board member, Mayor Julie Bajowski from Dunedin. This was her thing. In 2010, we launched another route called the North Coastal Jolly Trolley that runs up to Tarpon Springs, and that's also contracted to the Jolly Trolley. The Looper in St. Pete has been a great success this past year especially. It's been running since 1978. We have another contractor who runs that. That's called the Looper Group that runs some of those services, and then PSTA also runs our electric buses on that route. Most of these services are designed and ridden by tourists. No matter where they're operated in the county, tourists are the main type of rider that they all serve. They're very, very popular. 3 of the 6 routes have their own TripAdvisor page and rating. And actually, right now, the Looper has the highest TripAdvisor rating, slightly beating out the Suncoast Beach Trolley, and then slightly, just a little bit around the same is the Clearwater Jolly Trolley. And I think those go up and down. But if you go on TripAdvisor, the comments about all of them are awesome. Much higher than most of the hotel ratings, I noticed, no matter where they are. The trolley services at PSTA are very, very popular and very successful. Down in St. Petersburg or up in Tarpon Springs, they love them. Ridership is growing on most of the routes, most of the trolley routes. I think that's tied to the growing tourism numbers that we're seeing in the county. There's many, many requests I get every month about expanded trolleys, more trolleys. I think I probably average 2 mayors and probably 4 city manager calls per month from other cities that don't have trolleys today that want a trolley in our county. As you know, we have 24 different municipalities, so they all know my number. The way we funded this over the year, and it's largely related to just how old these routes are, is a complex network of funding mechanisms with 10 different cities, plus Pinellas County. 10, we have contracts. And this is what Alan and his firm enjoy reviewing all the time, is these contracts to help provide some of the funding for these Jolly Trolley, I mean, not just Jolly, all the trolley routes are funded by different sources of funding. But despite that sort of complexity with the funding, they're incredibly successful, and it's working. I mean, right now, this is a system that is working really, really well for PSTA. So that's pretty much what I wanted to kind of get across. Now, just a little teaser for some of the discussions we're going to have at the Finance Committee in a couple weeks. As was mentioned, there's different mechanisms for operating these trolleys. Some that PSTA operates, some that we contract out with different providers. We have different funding arrangements for the operations, and we have different funding arrangements for buying the trolleys themselves. As you can see across the top, no matter if it's PSTA or the Looper or the Jolly Trolley, the operating costs the cost of PSTA to provide these services are really very, very comparable, with Looper being a teeny bit lower than PSTA, and then Jolly Trolley being a little bit more expensive. That's the cost to PSTA, how much we're paying with our operating budget. Now, I think our chair, Chair Long, asked Debbie some questions that are important questions to note on the trolleys themselves for all of these different services. Each service has a different way that they have bought trolleys in the past. The way PSTA buys trolleys for its fleet is through our federal capital grants. Those are grants that we cannot use to provide to run the buses or the trolleys or to pay contractors. We must use those only for eligible capital expenditures, and that's what we've always done. That's what has been done since the 1960s. Jolly Trolley does it a little bit differently. Jolly Trolley buys about 2 trolleys per year, and they bill part of the $80 an hour, $80.80 is to PSTA is paying for those Jolly Trolley trolley replacements. They also provide their charter revenues to help buy replace their trolleys each year. But that's a little bit different because PSTA is paying Jolly Trolley and the Looper out of our operating assistance. That means the PSTA property tax is paying for the trolleys that Jolly Trolley is operating, not the federal grants. Our operating assistance, which is where, as Commissioner Eggers was noting, that's where we're most focused on, is how we can keep our operating funds going. That is where we're paying these contracts out of. And we cannot use the federal funds to buy trolleys, to run trolleys or to pay a contractor with to get trolleys. But we're going to talk about that more detail at the Finance Committee. Just before this meeting began, I was made aware of a proposal, a sort of a change to the way things have been done for a long time that the Jolly Trolley gave to some of the board members on PSTA, where they proposed that we should pay them to buy trolleys instead of us buying trolleys, and that they would do a debt financing purchase of trolleys and then bill us for those trolleys through a debt financing thing through their contract. That's an interesting proposal. Maybe that would somehow save money. I'm not sure, because that would obviously have financing expenditures. I also know we have to look at the implications of that in more detail, because we won't be able to use federal funds. We'll have to use our own property tax, local dollars to do that. But we'll have more answers to that on the 18th. And then finally, the Looper down in St. Petersburg, it does yet a different way. It's used PSTA grants in the past. PSTA has bought Looper trolleys and leased them to the Looper through a lease agreement. And then more recently, the city of St. Petersburg has provided funds and bought trolleys for them. That's the way that works. So again, lots of different interesting discussions to have on October 18th. Please feel free to ask any questions now, and then we'll be back to you with a recommendation on purchasing replacement trolleys in about a month.
Is that it, Brad?
That's it.
Thank you very much. Now, for members of the board, I think it would be very wise for Brad if you could have a little chart or some kind of a visual that explains it all out, the various services, where the money comes from, what the restrictions are. And then during your debriefings with your individual board members over the next few weeks, you have a deep dive discussion on how that all works together, who pays for what, public dollars versus the federal dollars coming down, and all of that.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I'm very sensitive about, remembering the last time we got into a public discussion about the trolleys, was our procurement guidelines that prohibit us from pre-selecting any particular vendor. So I want to make sure that we're not moving down that path with an already assumed agreement without taking into consideration that we very likely might have to go out on procurement.
Definitely.
Is that valid?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
Good, I'm glad I got that right. Okay. Commissioner Schulman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is actually for our representatives from the city of St. Petersburg. I don't know if there's been any conversation at the city level about the vision for the Central Avenue trolley as the BRT starts to roll out, and whether that service is planned and expected to remain at the current rates, if it's planned to remain at all, or what changes may have come up in conversations there. And I realize that information might not be available now, but
Commissioner, hold on. Press your button, please. Commissioner Rice?
We have spent quite a bit of time with Brad, Cassandra, Downtown Partnership, myself. I think there were a few other stakeholders. We spent a long time going over what the new looper pathway would be. And we really had to kind of broker and negotiate quite a few things because everybody wants a looper stop, and that's just not possible. We needed a route that was designed by planners and not, we had inherited a route that was based on a subscription service, and we wanted to grow out of that and have something that made more sense. And we did design it and did anticipate the stops. That planning was overlaid where our future BRT connection would be. Also, I think it's bus route 36 that runs through downtown. So the whole looper, people would like to see it expanded because it's popular, it's free, it's really easy to get out of your car and hop on and just get around. But the short answer is yes, we certainly did look at how that route intersects with what the future BRT routes and stops will be.
so, and thank you for that. My question was more towards the Central Avenue trolley.
Okay, sorry.
I realize that the layout of the stops the looper, but as the BRT becomes operational, are we really expecting riders to shift from Central Avenue? We talked to the business owners and stakeholders there about their vision for the Central Avenue trolley and shifting ridership to the BRT lines. Again, backing up into do we need to buy those buses or those trolleys at this point if the service may change? And I just didn't know if that conversation along the Central Avenue corridor has been had with stakeholders and folks at the city.
Maybe with Evan Morey, our transportation director, but not so much with council members.
Okay.
Yeah, I can just add, and I think Commissioner Driscoll might want to say something. All of the federally required ridership forecasting that was related to the Bus Rapid Transit project had to do a lot of different scenarios with the parallel services in that same corridor, including the Central Avenue trolley. And so while you're correct that the models show that there will be some people that are currently riding the trolley today that will switch to the Bus Rapid Transit, especially the ones that are going longer, like all the way to the beach, the ridership on, the remaining ridership on the Central Avenue trolley, even though it'll be pared back some, but on the remaining trolley, will still be one of our highest, still be very highly used according to all the forecasts.
All right. Okay, next on the queue is Commissioner Gerard.
I just had a totally different question about this little chart you have on slide 7 about the operating cost per hour and the contract rate. Does the operating cost here for PSTA include the cost of purchasing the trolleys? Because
It does not. It does not.
Well, then it appears that the trolley services are somewhat cheaper. They're buying their own trolleys. We're not buying them, are we?
Right, no, we're not buying, it's different in each of the boxes. So, but this is, each box shows the cost to PSTA. So the incremental cost of operating trolleys at PSTA is $78.89.
But that's not the total cost.
That's not-
You
that's not-
include the purchase price, so I guess.
That does not
And if we're not
include
paying
buying
the
the
purchase-
buses, right? It doesn't.
And we're not looking at apples and apples.
No, we're not. I mean, not necessarily.
When we get to actually talking about this, I think we should fix that.
Again, this is showing, and it's very important that we focus on what can be paid out of the PSTA
I
budget.
understand grant sources. I
Yeah.
also know that we're buying a whole bunch of other buses that we could use, but
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, we have that number. We can provide that, sure.
All right. Next in the queue is Commissioner Driscoll.
Thank you. At this point, we need to back up because Commissioner Schulman had asked for input from the St. Petersburg representatives regarding the use of the Central Avenue trolley. So I'd like to continue that part of the conversation with my input. As Brad mentioned, the BRT will pull some folks from Central Avenue trolley to use that instead, especially if they're going all the way to the beaches. But what we see happening now with the Central Avenue trolley beyond the beach commuters is that it is becoming very much like a second looper for those who need to go east and west between downtown and the Edge District and the Grand Central District. So as those those neighborhoods just west of downtown become more popular, more people are looking for ways to get from the 200 block of Central down to the Grand Central District. And the CAT moves really fast, you know, compared to walking or using your car to try to find a parking space. So it's really gaining momentum as part of the Car Free St. Pete movement. And I see that continuing as we move forward. I mean, when we talked about the looper and the new route as that was being reimagined, there was a lot of input from community stakeholders that an east-west looper or a western, more stops, you know, west of where it was currently running was really in demand. And so with the changes to the looper, we have that sort of east-west, sort of it's a really big loop, but because of the frequency of the CAT, it acts very much like the looper if you want to go down into the Edge District and then back to downtown. Does that make sense? So I'm excited that we'll have BRT for quick to the beaches, the looper for basically the north-south all around downtown, and then the CAT acting as an east-west looper to really have more coverage of the areas where we're seeing the most activity regarding you know, working and playing around St. Petersburg. So I hope that helps answer your question, kind of puts more of an illustration into the answer. I can sort of see it in my head, and I hope I explained it okay to you, so that you see that this is actually going to help us provide more coverage and better service for everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner Driscoll. Commissioner Schulman?
And thank you for that. Really, my goal was to make sure that our plans for the Central Avenue trolley were aligned with the plans that the city is envisioning for that corridor as BRT unfolds. It wasn't to say that we should or shouldn't have it, just to make sure that we were on the same page as far as what the city is thinking in that, as that development continues. So thank you both for the comments there.
And I think it's fair to say that we are working in a pretty solid partnership with the city of St. Pete, as with all of our partners, correct, Brad?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
All right, anyone else for the good of the conversation for this evening? No? Okay. All right, well then we will move on to reports and correspondence. Is there any, Brad? I don't see any at your desk here.
No.
All right, how about any performance updates?
I would just note that compared to a citizen who spoke earlier, that actually ridership is up through the end of August in total on PSTA services, according to our report. So that's positive. I'm not so sure if they'll end up being up or down, because I did note that when the hurricane didn't actually come here, but threatened to come here, those days over that weekend, the ridership was very low. Labor Day weekend.
That's not exactly
So,
within our control.
No, but, so we'll see how it ends up.
All right. Future meeting subjects.
Again, I think we have some exciting presentation on our branding of our rapid transit down in St. Petersburg that Whitney Fox and perhaps our consultants might present at the October meeting, and we're also going to be talking about trolleys. So I look
Okay.
forward to that.
Any other business? Anyone? No? Board member comments? Anyone have any comments for the good of the order? Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Excellent. Thank you very much for a very productive evening and for all of your comments. Look forward to seeing you next time.
Call you up at midnight. Charlie, it wasn't adjourned properly. We're still in a PSTA meeting.
Joanne, thank you for being here.
There's nights I feel like I'm still that busy.
Yes.